and welcome to this webinar on the 25 must-haves for your sports website in 2025. Just before I make a start, if there's any technical issues, if you can't hear or see me or see the slides, please just pop a note in the chat and we'll see what we can do. But otherwise, hopefully everyone can see and hear me and we'll make a start. So just a quick intro to myself, just in case you haven't come across me before. My name is Will. I'm the founder and managing director of a sports digital agency called Webbox. For the last 16 years, we've helped the likes of WRU, Welsh Athletics, WSA, and many others to maintain and manage their websites and run performance marketing campaigns for them. And it's really with this experience and insights that I bring you this content today. Because over these 16 years, obviously we've seen what works and what doesn't work when it comes to sports websites. And that really has allowed us to pull together these 25 points that I'm going to share with you today. Now, just before we begin, just a few things for you to be aware of. We are recording today's session, so you should receive a copy of that next week. This is a really fast-paced talk, so just forgive me for kind of maybe breezing over some points, but I'm going to keep things going at pace. And if you want to recap anything, you can obviously check the recording or we can chat afterwards. Also conscious that obviously within sports there's a wide variety of organisations and businesses, so I'm hoping that the vast majority of these 25 must-haves will be applicable to you today. There's also a little bit of interaction, but don't worry, I'm not going to embarrass anyone. So there's 1 or 2 points within the presentation that I'm just going to ask for your hands up, so you can use the hands up feature on Zoom just to give me a bit of a sense of direction at particular points. And then just finally, would love to get your thoughts and feedback on today's session. Please drop us a message. You can get us at Webbox Digital on socials. Now, just so you know the structure of today's talk, we've broken it down into 6 different sections. So if you're in marketing or comms, it might be that you have a particular specialism. So you might want to look out for that at the particular point. But we're going to cover things related to design, marketing, behind the scenes, content, functionality, and experience today. So without further ado, let's get straight into it, and we're going to talk about 6 must-haves, all relating to the design of your website. So the first one is a data-driven user experience. Now, user expectations are becoming far more demanding. Therefore, web designers are starting to focus more on the user experience of that website. Now, we all know that within organisations, people have different preferences and desires, different brand guidelines and so on. But really what this must-have is about is being led by data, not personal preferences. Now, there's a bit of a quick how-to in terms of how to do this. So first of all, you need to define your strategy. So how are you actually going to approach the design of your website, whether it's new or an existing website? And ultimately put the users or members at the center of that process. One quick idea in terms of how you might want to do that is actually workshop with some of your members or people who are involved in the sport or in the business, and actually get their thoughts and feedback on your current website and how it might be improved. On the flip side of that, you can also use platforms like Personalize, which actually start to monitor your website. Others like GA4, Hotjar, there's many platforms that you can start to put into your site to actually gather more data about how people are using your website. The second then is obviously starting to leverage all this data. So you've got these platforms in place. How can you leverage that data to then make data-driven decisions? So a really simple example might be how far do people scroll down the page and having that produced to you as a heat map. And then based on that data, you might rearrange the order in which the content appears on that page to put the more important things at the top. And then the final part of this is it's a continual process. So don't feel like if you've done this once, you've ticked the box. It's always a case of learning from this data to always improve the user experience of your site. Now, number 2 is a mobile-first design. This should be no surprise to anyone that actually, mobile users far outweigh desktop users on average in the sector. So actually, if you're in the process of designing a new website at the moment or thinking about that maybe for next year, this is a must for you because you should be taking a mobile-first approach. Now, there's some huge benefits to this. One of them would be kind of page speeds, because if you start designing a new website with a mobile-first design approach, the page speed of your site should naturally be higher than if you took a desktop-first approach. Now, I've got a graphic on screen which also just shares a little bit about what's comfortable for users when they're navigating around your website on their phone. So you want to make sure that the really important content and call to actions are within the green zone. If it's a must, maybe in the orange zone, but absolutely let's avoid those red zones because it's difficult for people to reach those areas. Now, the third must-have is micro interactions and animated cursors. Just want to give you a little flavour as to what I mean by this. So on the left, you've got an example of a button where when you click it, rather than just wait and see what happens and then it causes user frustration, the button animates so the user knows what's going on. And on the right-hand side, you've got a rather verbose example of an animated cursor. So when you actually hover over items in the navigation, you can see that there's an image which appears in the background. Now, have you ever kind of clicked a button on a website and maybe thought, is it actually doing anything? What's going on? And it's that sense of uncertainty that causes a really poor user experience. And that sense of uncertainty is something which we can overcome by using micro interactions. You can also enhance the experience by having animated cursors, but not in a kind of cheap and cheerful way. This can be done in a really kind of professional way. So let me give you an example. If your users on your website and they hover over a video, you could change the cursor to a play icon to encourage them to actually play that video. Whilst the video is playing, your mouse cursor could also change to a pause icon. So it just gives the user a bit more of a feel of what's going on the website, but also should encourage them to engage with your content more. Now, the fourth must-have is a phrase that I've coined, if I'm honest, and it's called true reflection design. Do you walk down the street, you maybe see a really nice car, and you have you build up a picture of the person who might drive that, and kind of, maybe what they do for work or their wealth or what have you. Or maybe someone invites you around for tea and, they open the front door and this is what you see. And you think, wow, my first impression is that this is a lovely house. But then they land on your website and they see this. And actually the first impression is really poor. So, it just looks unloved, it looks old, dated, and therefore that's the reflection that the user gets of your organization. So actually, true reflection design is all about understanding that first impressions really matter. If you're the leading organization in a particular sport, or you're the leading sports apparel brand, then actually you want your website to reflect that, your status within the sector. And actually it's really important that we ask ourselves really pragmatic questions about what people might assume of our organization off the back of viewing our website. Now, hopefully this goes without saying that probably doing this exercise internally is not going to be beneficial, because actually if you ask internal stakeholders what they think of the website, more often than not they will give you the compliments, and actually you need people in the room who are going to be objective and actually say, look, there are areas of improvement. So again, just a point on a practical basis on how you could actually put this into play. Now, the fifth must-have is dark mode. So I guess we've all seen dark mode normally on our mobile devices. where as you're maybe navigating Google or a particular settings page in iOS, for example, if it's particularly dark or light in the room, your background will automatically adjust. And this trend is coming through to websites now in a big way. Now, it's becoming what we call an industry standard because actually it ticks more than one box. So, of course, when you look at dark mode, you might think to yourself, it looks really cool, it looks smooth, I like it from an aesthetic perspective. But actually it ticks another big box, which is accessibility, which I'll come on to a bit later. And actually making sure that your website is accessible and that actually you're being inclusive to as wide audience as possible is ultra important. So therefore, this is ticking two boxes for me. It's a big must-have for your website. Now, number 6 is having an intuitive navigation. So often I browse around sports websites and it's difficult to understand not only what it is that they do, but actually if I'm looking for content, how to find that content. And I've heard so many times from our clients and prospects where on maybe old websites, they had to just use the search box to find content because they couldn't find it naturally through the navigation. This is a common problem, but we have a strategic approach to overcome that. So I'm just going to share 3 simple steps with you today. The first is consider the layout of your navigation. So what I mean by that is, are you going to have your navigation traditionally in the header area with all of the links set out across the top? Or potentially, are you going to have it all behind a hamburger icon where it allows your header to be more clean and you can just open the navigation that way? And there's other layouts as well you can consider in terms of having a kind of small primary navigation in the header above your main navigation below. Lots of options in terms of layout, but worth considering what is the right layout for you based on how much content you have. The second is hierarchy. So look, not everything can go in your main navigation. So often as kind of comms managers and marketers, we might get asked by people in the organization to add another page to the site and add this information to the site, and they'll say it's really important. And what happens over time is that we just keep adding to the navigation, keep adding, and it just becomes bloated. We have to be hard on ourselves to actually say, not everything can go in that top navigation, and it might be that it's better suited to another place within the website or maybe a footer navigation just to keep that hierarchy balanced. And the final part is content. Think about the terminology in which you use on the website. Think about the wording and how you position things, because if people are looking to engage with your organization or get involved or buy a product, it's really important that they can relate to the terminology in which you're using. Okay, that's the first section. We're into the second section. All of these points now are relating to the content of your website. Now, the first thing is having a clear proposition. Now, if we're really honest, if we look at a website like this, we have no idea what that organization does, because actually they're not setting out their proposition right in front of our face. But also I would challenge you as a rhetorical question to think about, could you actually sum up what your organization does or offers or sells in one sentence? Because actually it's more challenging than we think. So having a clear proposition is trying to kind of move away from leaving the user guessing what it is that you do and being really clear on what it is that you provide or your position in the market right up top. So don't kind of make the user scroll for this content. Don't make them kind of read 3 paragraphs of text to understand what it is that you do. Set it out in your hero section right at the top of your homepage. So if you're the leading sports healthcare brand, look, that's what you've got to kind of run with, and that's got to be really clear on your homepage. If you're the leading national governing body for athletics, look, that's got to be right at the top. Whatever it is for you, you need to think of what those words are, come up with a proposition which is unique and punchy, and make that the first thing that people see. Now, not only does this avoid kind of confusion, but what you'll see in terms of data is that the bounce rate of your homepage should reduce, because actually people are engaging with your content more because they understand what it is that you provide. Now, number 8 is interactive storytelling. So many sports organizations that we kind of deal with have got amazing heritage stories. They've got so many things to share, and so often on their websites it's just done in text. So for example, if you were a stadium and you were talking about your heritage, your kind of foundations, actually to read paragraphs of text is quite a thing to ask actually for users. But if that was done using this example I've just shown on screen, where actually people get to scroll through the page, take in videos, imagery, animations and so on, it's so much more engaging and people can digest that content far easier. This can be used, though, in a number of different ways. So, for example, if you want people to get involved in a competition, again, rather than just having a page about that competition and just asking them to register, look, use a storytelling approach to use video and imagery and so on of maybe last year's event and really sell it to them as an opportunity so that they get a flavour as to what it is that they're potentially entering into. So I guess we sum this up as we want people to buy your passion for sport, and therefore that's really done through interactive storytelling. Now, number 9 is interactive features. So often we look at websites and we're bored, but we need to make sure that actually people look at our sites and they're engaged. So actually, it's really important to think about the functionality of your website and what it is that we're doing on the site to engage our users. So if we've got a website that is just information-based and people just have to go through lots of pages and read lots of content to digest that, then look, the engagement rate is going to be really low. But actually, if we're getting people to engage with our content, so maybe looking at maybe calculators, quizzes, subscribing, finding nearest clubs, ticket selectors, so on. There's so many options, right? I'm not going to list them all. Then actually what you could start doing is seeing your engagement rate increase. And you have a perfect opportunity within the sports area to actually do this, because you've got the ability to get people involved in events, get people involved in competitions, see results, whatever it might be for you in your particular setting. There are so many opportunities that it is a great way to get people engaging with you. Okay, I said it was going to be fast-paced, so look, I'll keep going, but hope you're all still with me. We're now on to the third section, which is all relating to marketing. Now, the first one is technical SEO, and hopefully, again, this is not a surprise that your website needs to be technically sound from an SEO perspective. This is really important that we understand the huge shifts going on at the moment within the world of SEO. Let me just give you one example. So when you're doing a Google search at the moment, in a large proportion of searches, we're starting to get Gen AI overviews at the top of that search engine results page. Now, what this is doing naturally is it's serving up content to people, which is helpful. However, they've then found the information they need and they're not clicking through to your website. So we're actually seeing things like visitor numbers going through to the website lower. However, your content is still being surfaced in Google, but just in a different way. Now, this is one trend happening at the moment out of many that we need to be aware of, and we need to be adapting the website and its content accordingly. So there's lots of things to cover. I'm not going to get into the technicals today because it obviously is a technical subject, but there's some things on screen there in terms of things that you should be addressing on your website to make sure that you are appearing within Google. If I just touch quickly on the first one, structured data, it's a really good opportunity for you to make sure that there's relevant tags on your website so that you are being picked up in various places on Google. So for example, if you have on your website an FAQs section or some sort of like question-based content, then actually you can wrap that in particular tags so that you have an opportunity of ranking your website in the section on Google called People Also Ask, a PAA box. So just one little example of something which is really simple to implement, but just gives you more exposure on Google. Now, the next one is landing pages. Really important that we have good landing pages on our website. Now, if you're running maybe an event or a competition, you could have a dedicated landing page all about that event and competition and how to get involved. But it's your opportunity to sell the dream and to get people engaged. And I've got this example on screen purposely. So this is obviously from the Apple website. And if you're anything like me, you might start scrolling through these pages. And as you go further and further into the content, you get more and more sucked in until right at the end, you're looking for that buy now button. And that is really what you're looking to do on your website, is actually get people really engaged with that content, so much so that right at the end, they want to enter the competition, they want to become a member, they want to buy, whatever it is for your organization. That is your opportunity to get people to go in for that call to action. Now, a quick pro tip. The first thing is put Hotjar on your website. There's a free plan available, but there's also paid plans as well, depending on requirements. But Hotjar, what it can do is it starts to analyze how people are engaging and navigating around your website. It actually does screen recordings so that you can see how they navigate around your website. And it also gives you heat maps so you can see how far down the page someone is scrolling, amongst many other things. So if you haven't already, I'd really encourage you to pop Hotjar on your website. And the second tip is, if you've got landing pages and other maybe forms on your website, it's really important to make sure that they're integrated into your CRM or membership platform, because the last thing we want to be doing is day-to-day manually copying data from one platform to another. Now, the next must-have is all around call to actions. Now, I've mentioned a few times on this talk already about things like how people might want to become a member, they might want to register, they might want to sign up, they might want to buy. And all of these call to actions and all of that terminology is actually quite far down the marketing funnel. So if you think about a marketing funnel, a common one we use is the AIDA funnel. Right at the top, you've got awareness and then interest, desire and action. And actually these points that I've just been talking about are right down at the bottom. Whereas actually we need to think about what we call secondary call to actions on our website as well. Now, they might be things like downloading a document, or maybe registering for an event, maybe signing up to an in-person event you might be hosting. But all of these things are slightly higher up the funnel and require less commitment from someone. So actually, if someone wants to just dip their toe in the water, maybe a trial training session as an example, then actually think about what you can do to accommodate people who aren't ready to fully commit yet, but actually they maybe higher up your marketing funnel. So call to actions, don't just think it's all about the bottom of the funnel. Think about your brand awareness. Think about the softer touch points that you can still engage with your target audience. Now, a little test we use, and this is not scientific by any means, but if you're looking around your website and you're wondering whether these call to actions are prominent and clear, we always just recommend looking away from the screen, let your eyes reset, and then come back to the screen and ask yourself the question, what were my eyes drawn to? And if your eyes are drawn to nothing, nothing in particular, that's a problem. If your eyes are drawn to lots of things on the screen and you're not quite sure where to look, again, that's a problem. But if your eyes are drawn to important content or a call to action or something that actually you want people's attention to be on, then you're probably ticking the right boxes. So as I say, it's not a scientific test, but it's just a good sense check as to whether your call to actions are prominent on your page. Now, the next must-have is in relation to advanced tracking, and I do need a little bit of involvement from people. I'm not going to embarrass anyone, but I'd love you to use the hands up feature on Zoom if you could. So the first question is, who's using Google Analytics to track users on your website? If you just want to use your little hands up feature. Great stuff, got lots of hands going up. Great, thank you everyone. Okay, so we've got a good number there. Okay, could you also keep your hands up if you're using event or e-commerce tracking within Google Analytics? This is where you can actually track how many times people have converted. Okay, not many at all. Okay, right. Next one. What happens if an action is triggered? So can you actually, sorry, I'll rephrase that. Keep your hands up if an action is triggered after a conversion is tracked. So a real example of that is if someone were to register or sign up, then an action is triggered, i.e. maybe an email is sent out. Any hands? Okay, not many at all. Okay, last one is put your hands up if your website or marketing is adapted after a conversion is tracked. So let me give you an example. You track a conversion, so someone's registered, signed up, so on. And at that point then, maybe the content on your website changes or your marketing campaign adapts accordingly. Okay. Good. No one's doing it. That's good. Okay. The reason it's good is because I'm trying to get us to understand that actually what I mean by advanced tracking is not putting just the basics in place. This is not just about putting Google Analytics in place and thinking, do you know what? We have ticked that box. We are tracking our users. We're gathering data. Happy days. There is so much more we can do. And actually starting to adapt the content of our website once we know a conversion has been tracked, or actually tracking how many conversions have taken place, or tracking which buttons on the page are triggering the conversions. All of these things are possible, but if you go back to my first must-have, all of this comes back to user experience and having a data-driven approach. So the more tracking you can put in place, the better your website can become, because you can actually make informed decisions on what's working and what's not working on your website. So just a couple of little things. I've mentioned Google Analytics. If you haven't put it in place already, please do. Hotjar is another great tool, and there's many others that you could put in place, but both of those are free and definitely worth having on your website. Now, a little pro tip is some people get a little bit overwhelmed with all of this data, and you think, gosh, I've got data coming in from all of these different sources. I don't know what to do with it. What you could do is you could create a custom dashboard within Google Looker Studio. This is a reporting platform by Google, which allows you to pull in data from multiple sources and to surface it in just one dashboard, but you can determine what that dashboard looks like and the KPIs that it surfaces. So if you haven't got this in place, it's just a really good thing to have within the organization so that you can actually surface the right data to the right people. The second thing is if you're maybe struggling to capture data, maybe because people aren't accepting your cookies policy, we've seen a big increase in that simply just by moving your cookies acceptance banner to the middle of the screen. So what we do is we just place it in the middle, and then we grey out the perimeter of your site so that when the user lands on your website, they need to make a decision. They need to either accept or decline cookies, but they can't ignore it, which is what a lot of users do when it's just hidden at the bottom of the screen. Now, if you need help with GA4, then we've got some guidance on that. We've got a document on our website which you can download, so feel free to use that QR code, but I'll also follow up later with a link for you as a reminder as well. Okay, we're halfway through. Hope everyone's still with me. I'll keep moving at pace as we move on to our next section, which is all relating to the functionality of your website. Now, it's really important that we pay attention to this because actually it's not a trend which is going to go away. Personalization, this is all about personalizing the experience of your website so that we adjust content accordingly based on user preferences. Now, like with interests in sports, we don't all like the same sports. We don't all like the same colours. We don't all have the same preferences. And therefore, why would we serve up the same content on our website and think it actually addresses everyone's needs? It's really important that we understand that actually personalising the content on our website is going to offer up a better user experience. A quick example of how this can be implemented, because I don't want it to sound too technical, is when you're reading news on the BBC Sport app, when you start reading news, let's say within a particular sport, so if you pick rugby because it's apt at the moment with the automations going on, then actually as you start reading all about kind of rugby news, it's going to serve up more news related to that sport. That is just one really basic way in which they are adapting the content of the platform based on what it knows about me, which is that I've got an interest in that sport. It's a really simple thing to do. It's actually not that complicated, but really important to actually address the fact that people have different interests, might be coming to your website at different points in the journey, and it's a great way to actually enhance the user experience of your platform. If you want to do this a little bit simpler, you can have a little look into a platform called Personalize. Personalize will plumb into most websites, and it will do a lot of this heavy lifting for you so that developers don't need to write all of this code from scratch. So it would be worth having a little look at that platform. Now, moving on to AI. Gosh, everyone is talking about AI at the moment, and honestly, this needs its own talk, and I've just not got time for that at the moment. So I'm just going to breeze over it, and I want to address it from a high level, right? So I want to ask us the question, are we serious about actually driving better performance on our websites and improving the user experience using AI? Because what I see at the moment is the gimmicky stuff, right? So this is where maybe people say, oh, I'm going to get it to write some social media content with loads of emojis, or I'm going to get it to make, Chris in our office look like Santa. But what would Chris look like with a beard? This is the kind of stuff that I see people doing. And look, it's great, it's fun, I love all of that. But we need to be serious about how AI can actually improve the performance of our websites. The other factor I want to mention is you are the marketer or comms professional, and AI is just the enabler. The reason for mentioning this is so often I've seen marketers and comms managers go down the road of letting AI do far too much for them. And actually, it starts to take you on a path which is not strategic, which has got less consideration for your audience. And actually the results off the back of it aren't great. So I think we need to be understanding where the line is. We are still the professional in our field. We are still the one driving the strategy. But of course, AI can help us with some of the things around the edges. And I'll give you some examples of that, right? So within your CMS, it could help you within your content editor to write content, or it could generate your metadata automatically for you without you having to write it yourself. Or even better still, it can generate all of your alt tags by automatically scanning your images and writing the alt tag. And trust me, it's very accurate. Now on the front end, it could give you content suggestions. So I've just talked about personalization and serving up more personalized content. It can do that. Or it can personalize your search experience so that when you're searching for something, it's more relevant to how you've been navigating around the website to date. There's so many things that you could do, but I just want to encourage you to kind of use it in the right way to drive better performance and to forget the gimmicks. Now, the next point is all in relation to forms, okay? Now, all of our websites will have forms, whether that's just a basic contact form, whether it's an event registration form, competition sign up, whatever it is, we're all going to have forms. And I want to give you two examples of two types of forms that work really well on sports websites. The first one is a full screen form. What it does is it actually opens up full screen, and the purpose of doing this is simply to avoid the user getting distracted. So if we're all really honest, we might get faced with a form and then we go, oh, what's that on the navigation? Or, oh, let's read that content. Actually, if you remove all distractions and just place the form on the page, you will have a better engagement rate. The second type of form I want to touch on is a progressive lead form. So if you're at the moment trying to generate more inquiries, membership inquiries, leads, and so on, then actually, if you can plumb your CRM or membership platform into your website, what it allows you to do is understand actually whether you've got this person's information already or not. So for example, I might land on your website today and I might sign up to your newsletter. And it might be really simple. You might just ask me for my name and email address. Great, happy days, I'm now on your newsletter list. But when I come back to your website tomorrow, to see that form again just seems a bit odd because I completed that yesterday. But that form could then be adapted and it could actually say, right, we know it's Will, so Will's coming back to the website, but we don't actually have his company and we don't have, maybe his address or something else that you need. So actually we're going to ask him for those 2 bits of information on his second visit. So progressive lead forms allow you to drip feed more content into your CRM over time rather than having this massive form up front, which obviously becomes a barrier to most people. So there's some tips for forms. Moving on to real-time updates, such an important part of sport websites, right? Because actually things move at pace, okay? Now what you want to do is create this sense of like missing out, right? So this kind of FOMO thing of like actually loads of other people have signed up to this recently, or loads of people are checking out this page at the moment, or there's only 2 left in stock. Whatever is relevant for you, what you're trying to do by having real-time data on your website is create that sense of urgency. Now this works great on sports websites because at the end of the day, competitions will have a deadline to register. People will be wanting to see results at some point and you can surface that data live. If it's a product, people want to see if it's in stock, where it's in stock potentially, if it's in retail, so on and so forth. So all of this can be done by actually having real-time data fed into your website so that you can make sure that people are encouraged more to actually engage and have that sense of urgency which lacks in so many of our websites. Now the next is an online booking system. Now I appreciate this might not be applicable for everyone here, but so important for the majority of sports organisations to have an online booking system. Now it's important that we have this system actually integrated into our website so it feels like it's part of the website. So whether, and I don't want to get too technical, but whether you're embedding it onto your website, whether it's integrated through an API or anything in the middle, it's really important that it feels part of your brand and it feels part of your website. The last thing we want to do, this is always a last resort, is link off to a third-party booking system, which doesn't feel like your organization. It just has a completely different design because the user experience is really disjointed. So if you can get it to integrate with a CRM, a booking system and so on, and it can be embedded on your website, that is always the best way to go about this. Also think about the actual booking process. So it's so important that people, register for events and they sign up and they get involved and they become a member, so on and so forth. All of these things are really important to your organization. So actually, we need to consider how easy we're making that journey for people. And again, you might want to ask people outside of the organization for their feedback on how simple it's been to actually book online with your organization. Now, a little pro tip is we all know that people will fall out of this process. So you can use a strategy called remarketing to actually show ads to them on platforms like Meta, so Facebook and Instagram, the Google Display Network and many others, to actually remind them to come back and complete that process. This always drives a higher conversion rate. Now, the next must-have is in relation to a members area. Again, I appreciate this is not going to be applicable for everyone, but I'm sure it will be for the majority. So having a members area is super important, but of course, there's some big must-haves in relation to this. You need to make sure that your members area is far more than just like a basic account area where people can change their details. That doesn't make your website sticky. You need things in your members area which make your members area so sticky that people want to come back time and time again. Now, this could be looking at 2 ways, and I've called this proactive and on demand. So what I mean by proactive is if people are looking to maybe buy tickets, make an order, buy a product, then they're probably going to be driven themselves to come back to the website. They're being proactive in actually making that action. But you also need to surface information in the members area, which is what we call on demand. So this is maybe where people might access meeting minutes, If it's a membership organization, they might renew their membership online. They might download a webinar or notes from an event, or even retrieve a promo code. Let's not, surface those without having to log into an account. So all of these things allow people to get access to information that we want to give them, but they've got to use their account for it. And what you'll find is by doing this, your membership area becomes sticky. And that's what you want it to be. You want people to come back time and time again. And if you want to take this to new levels, you can also then personalize that experience, but maybe a talk for another day. So moving on to commercial opportunities. So all of our sports websites, or let's say the vast majority, might be looking for commercial opportunities. This is where maybe advertisers have space on that website, or maybe areas in which you can generate income through the website. Now, what we always encourage is, as you're looking to design the website, it's important to think about sponsorship placements right at day one, because the last thing you want to do is shoehorn this into the design and then it just doesn't feel natural. So really important to consider how this looks, how this fits in with the user experience so it feels more seamless. The other point is creating a variety of opportunities. So some sponsors might want something really big and flashy on the website, and they might well be willing to pay for that. But others might just want a smaller presence. Others might just want their logo on a partner's page, so on and so forth. There's going to be a number of opportunities, but actually allowing for those different opportunities on your website is going to be important. But all of this, in my opinion, is immaterial if you can't track all of this activity. So if you're going to sell sponsorships space on your website, you need to be able to demonstrate the value to the organization that might want to sponsor you. You need to be able to say, we have X number of people visiting our website, our engagement rate is this percentage, people land on our website and stay for X amount of time. All of these metrics are going to be really important. But also to demonstrate the value to sponsors who are actually paying and they're on board, you need to have tracking on their ads as well. How many times have people clicked on their ads and gone through to their website off the back of placing an advert on your site? All of these things are really important to attract new sponsors and to retain existing sponsors. Again, appreciate this might not be applicable for everyone, but I'm sure the vast majority of you can relate to commercial opportunities on your website. Now, thinking about behind the scenes, this is really a topic which not many people talk about. So I'm hoping that this is interesting to people today. So the first is actually having the right CMS for the project. I think I always get a little bit worried when a company or an agency only work with one CMS and that's the only thing that they peddle, because actually sometimes it's not the right CMS for a particular project. And therefore, they're probably pushing their own agenda on what's right for your organization. At Webbox, we actually kind of work with a handful of different CMSs, and we take an agnostic approach to CMS so that we actually put forward the CMS that we think is going to fit your requirements perfectly for the here and now and for the future, as opposed to just having one that will push forward. Now, that's important because my feeling is that you should be involved in this decision as well. So it should be a CMS that you're comfortable using, because at the end of the day, you're going to be using it day in, day out, and our team less so. So it's really important to make sure the CMS is right for the project and also right for your team. So I've put on screen just some considerations. Things like scalability, security, usability. Is it transferable? Are there license fees for the CMS and so on? All of these things you need to consider when you're looking at the pros and cons. And you've guessed it, we've got a guide for this as well. So we have a document which you can go and download using that QR code. And again, I'll send it to you after this webinar. And it just does a bit of a pros and cons, side-by-side comparison of some of the leading CMSs. So it might be useful if you're thinking about redeveloping your website at the moment to have a look at that document just to get a flavour as to what CMSs are on the market and the differences between them side by side. Now, the 22nd must-have, nearly there now, is intelligent automation. So the last thing that we want to do is be doing the kind of day-to-day mundane tasks manually. Okay, so we need to get to a point where maybe registrations or leads, inquiries and so on are feeding into our CRM automatically. We need to rely on things like MarTech to follow up with people automatically. If you're a product-based business, again, all of the order confirmations, delivery statuses and so on can be automated through integrations with different platforms. But I would ask us to challenge ourselves and maybe create a list of things that we currently do manually, and then maybe prioritize that list on based on time. How long do these things take us to do? And then start to tackle that list to make sure that the website is doing the heavy lifting for you and you're not stuck doing the mundane things day to day. So really important to consider how your website ultimately can help you just day to day and reduce the burden on what it is that you've got to do. And the next point is security and redundancy. If we're really honest, no one talks about this, but actually you might talk about it after something has gone horribly wrong. So actually cyber attacks, as we all know, are becoming increasingly sophisticated, and we're having to think about kind of better ways to keep websites secure, especially when they're holding customer data or membership data and so on. So actually challenge ourselves to think now rather than when it's too late about the security of our website. Have we done all that we possibly can at this point to make sure the website is secure? To understand where data is stored, whether it's backed up. If it is backed up, have we tested the restoration process? So on and so forth. So I don't want to bog down with details today, but something which is really important is making sure that your website is secure and that you have a level of redundancy in place if things do go wrong. Now, coming into land with two final points. The first is in relation to experience, it's accessibility. And I start with accessibility for very good reason, because it is so important. Again, just for the final time on this talk, if you could just use the hands up feature on Zoom, if you considered accessibility during your website build. So if you want to pop your hand up, if you've considered accessibility in the build. Okay. A couple coming through. Not the majority though, interesting. Okay, so it's very important that we make sure that our websites are accessible to the widest audience. And look, there's a myth in the whole world of kind of web development, which is this only applies for public sector organizations. Boy, it applies to all of us, okay? So it's really important to make sure that our websites are accessible. This is addressing things like color contrasts, font sizes, making sure the website is tagged correctly so that screen readers can actually read through the website, making sure that the website's coded in a way so that people can tab you on the keyboard, tab through the content, so on and so forth. And all of this allows people who might have a visual impairment or other disability to engage with us on the website. Now, you might see a standard accessibility icon. It looks like a stick man on a lot of websites, and you'll see this on our own website as well. And when you click on that, it gives the user accessibility options for people to do things like increasing or decreasing font size, change the contrast, move into dark mode, so on and so forth. And it's just a little thing that you can put in place just to really help impaired users navigate around your website. So if you haven't addressed that on your website, I would really put that near the top of your list to kind of take away. There are also recently updated guidelines, so I'd encourage you to have a look at the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.2. They were updated fairly recently, just to see if your website is actually complying or not. And the 25th must-have, gosh, we're there, is page speed. You know, honestly, the last thing we want is slow and steady, because it does not win the race. What we need is a lot of speed in our websites. Okay, bit of a gimmick, but honestly, it's really, really important, right? So it's not just important because if we're honest with ourselves, we're a little bit impatient. It's not just important because sometimes people have slow internet speeds. It's actually important primarily because it's a huge SEO ranking factor. Google have come out and said this really plainly, that actually if your website isn't really quick to load, it's going to harm your rankings, okay? Now, they don't always come out and say things black and white. Often they'll come out and it's a bit of a grey answer. Then, they're never really wanting to give all the answers so people can rank well. But with this one, they're really clear. And they've created a tool which is called Page Speed Insights. And again, you can use that QR code to go there. And you can put your website URL into that tool and it will tell you how fast it is from Google's perspective. And within that tool, you need to be at least 80% in our experience, but actually you want to be in the green zone, which is actually 90% or higher. It's really, really an important factor to websites in 2025. Again, if you want to check out our own website, webbox.digital, you can put that through the platform and you'll see what score it gets, demonstrating how important we feel page speed is to building a good website. Now, look, before we wrap up, I just want to leave you with a few resources. So I'll wrap up in the next minute or so. And if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to take them as well. So the first thing is we've got a load of different documents, guides and resources that I'd love to share with you. Obviously, throughout this talk, I've given you a few QR codes, but I will follow up with links as well. So if you can benefit from any of these documents, that's not an extensive list on screen, but it gives you an idea as to what we've got, then please feel free to make use of those documents. The second thing is we offer to attendees of these sessions free digital audits. This is not run by some automatic software. This is actually run by our team here at Webbox, where we actually look through your website and or paid media campaign, and we will audit it from a layout, user experience perspective, accessibility, page speed, and so on. We'll look at all of these aspects manually, and we will have a playback session where we share the good, bad, and ugly with you. So if you want to arrange a free audit from us, again, use the QR code, or I'll follow up with a link. We'd love to offer that to you. And then finally, we run a number of these webinars. So if any of these topics are of interest to you, then please feel free to join them. We'd love to have you on our future webinars. We're always looking for feedback as well. So if you've got any feedback on this session or topic ideas for what we might speak on in 2025, we'd love to hear from you. But just before I wrap up, I'm just going to address one or two questions that I've had sent to me directly. So I've had a direct question here just in relation to personalization. I think someone missed the name of the platform. So the platform was called Personise, and that's YZE at the end. So if you want to have a look at that platform, Personise, that can be plumbed into most CMSs and give you a lot of the personalization functionality out of the box. I've also had another question here from Tom. Tom, good to see you. Let's have a look here. So video imagery, interactive features tend to slow down a site. Yes, best way to optimize this. Really good question, Tom. So I think this is something which we can all relate to, right? So there's always a balance between adding more and more content on our website and also the speed of it. But actually, I was only speaking to someone this week. I don't think we should feel limited by what content we put on our websites. So often people will say, oh, don't put loads of videos on because it's going to slow it down. I think actually we just need to ask ourselves the grown-up question, which is how do we put this content on in the most effective way? So, for example, if we look at video, you could have a really large video on your homepage, let's say, and what most companies might do is they might kind of just plonk that on and be done with it, but then obviously pay the penalty because obviously it's then affecting page speed. The right way to do that would be to consider that video file across all devices. So, for example, on a desktop with good connection, you might surface a compressed version of that MP4 file. On smaller screens, let's say an iPad, you might show a shorter version of that compressed file. So if it was a 30-second video, we might say we're actually going to crop it to 10 seconds for smaller devices. And actually on mobile, we're going to take that one step further. We're going to hide the video altogether and we're going to just show an image, because actually we know on mobile that could be a bit of a problem, especially if you're on a 3G, 4G connection. So look, we're just going to surface an image. So actually, I don't think it's about us feeling limited on what content we put on our sites. I think it's actually a case of you working with internal teams or working with an agency to actually find the right solution to putting this content on, because actually it's so important within the sector to surface great imagery and great video. So yeah, don't feel limited by not putting that on. Great, if there's any other questions, please feel free to pop it in the chat, but I think that's probably everything. I'll just wait couple of seconds in case anyone's typing. Okay, I think that's going to be all of them. So look, for today, I just want to say a massive thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to this content. I really hope these 25 must-haves have been helpful for you, but I also appreciate we've gone through this quite quickly today. So if you want to chat, I'm more than happy to, and I'm more than happy to deep dive into a number of these must-haves if they're of interest. So look, for today, thank you for your time, and we will be in touch over the coming days with a copy of the recording. Thank you very much.